before you go on, the Flint Institute of Art is celebrating its 10th Community Gala, which is an African American celebration. And Mrs. Spencer is one of the women who is going to, who has been photographed and is in the exhibit. The exhibit is a photographer, Jerry, he's an African American photographer. His name is Jerry Telefarino or something. Telefaro. And he's photographed 49 women in the Flint community. And that is what the exhibit is the women, they're called Women of a Tribe. And they're big, huge photographs.
New tribe. Women of a new tribe.
Big, huge photographs.
Cool.
And there is a list, maybe on FIA's website, but I mean, community women we all know.
They were women that were nominated and then they randomly picked them out.
Yeah, lottery. So she's going to be one of the women that is in that exhibit.
Yeah, we have a field trip scheduled for that for January 20th. We're taking a group of students to see that.
That's good. And Mrs. Spencer is how old would you?
90. She just had her birthday.
90.
She just had her birthday.
Yeah.
They had a big party at Mount Olive for
She
her.
talked about, at her party, she did talk about education.
Big time, I'm sure.
Yeah, and about, and her family talked about how important education was to the family.
Yes. And it was funny, the college that all of her aunts and uncles had went to, one of her uncles went on to get his PhD and become the chancellor of that college. Yeah, so I thought, isn't that incredible? And then an aunt became some big shot at something in Chicago. They all were professionals and they went far, even though this is all, you know, before World War II. So there's quite a barrier.
Yeah.
So they all did very well, and I thought, you know, that's really a tribute to their intelligence.
Yeah. Quality tells.
Yes.
Emphasis on education.
Right. Yeah, and obviously no one was appointing them as a token because they didn't care. In 1940, they didn't even have the pretense of making it look nice.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have to even go there.
Military was still segregated.
Yeah, the military is segregated till,
Jim
yeah.
Crow was real.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So then the third one, Miss Coles, and I assume many of you would know her.
Yes. Quite the personality.
Yes, she was. But I will say Miss Coles has the courage of her convictions. So Miss Coles, we won't give her birth year. Oh, she was, this sheet is kind of cheesy with a lot of detail. Doesn't have very many details because she wasn't very forthcoming.
No.
No.
I wouldn't think she
No, she told me who would care. So one thing I would say, Miss Coles is all about the ideas and not all about Miss Coles. And so she's very, I would say, she's a visionary, she's a leader, she has ideas, and her personality comes into it when she's getting you inspired or
Pushing you.
helping you over that line. Yes, helping you get to where she wants you to go. But it's not about her as a person. It's not all about Gloria Jean on a pedestal. And she's, yeah, like even here, when we did the Black Life and Literature collection after her, she did not show up. Yeah, she didn't show up. And then on the last day that she worked, Wanda Hardin did this PA thing telling people she was on the elevator and getting ready to leave and to congratulate her on her way out the building. And Miss Coles got off the elevator and the first thing she said, "Hardin, I heard that and that's it." Because we had lined up to say goodbye to her and we kind of all drifted back to our areas. Because she had that look on her face.
Oh.
Yes. So
And you're right.
she doesn't like a lot of.
She doesn't like it.
She doesn't like. Yeah, she doesn't like that.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, it's all low key.
Didn't she do a great deal to increase the collection regarding
Well,
African
we're
American
gonna. Miss
life,
Coles
literature, culture?
came here in
So on?
1984, and she was the 8th director of the library. She was the second woman. The first director was a woman, and Mrs. Caldwell. And then for From 1920 to 1984, all the directors were white men. So Miss Coles comes in 84, and she is the first African-American director, and she's the second woman director. And she totally revamps this library.
You can see
This is
it.
a quote from Miss Coles. This library was elitist and it did not serve the ordinary people of Flint, and I changed that. And she did. When you think what she went through and switched, she really focused it in a different area, way. Flint is changing and the library needs to change with the community, and so she does.
Honestly, that was the philosophy of library and ship at that point too.
Yes.
It was looking more at community rather than collection.
Right, but they brought her on purpose because they knew she was going to get them to this
She'd
new
already
place.
been in Toledo and done some work like that, and then Pratt.
And Enoch Pratt, yeah, she had done that in 2 other places. So she came here, and her former secretary told me people gave her a hard time. One, you're not going to tell me what to do. This is the way we have always done it.
Oh.
And so when
Sure.
when she basically let them know, I am in charge and you will do it, they had massive retirements. Because, oh yeah, a lot of the old guard
Yeah.
decided that they weren't going to have a woman and a black woman tell them what to do, so they left. But well, you probably worked for some of them. But you have to say, Miss Coles, if the library had continued the way it had gone, it would not be here today. And then, if Miss Coles had not fought for the library, it would not be here today. When it was spun off from the school district, she got the money from the Mott Foundation. She really was very instrumental in getting that millage passed to get the library funding. And so really and truly, I mean, she hired me, so I like her. But if it hadn't have been for her, we would not be in this room as part of the Flint Public Library. Miss Coles really and truly revamped the way the library is and then created a path for it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that's 3 women. All of them were firsts in things, and all of them worked in the library. I don't know if libraries are a nurturing space. I would hope so. But for these 3 women, it was for Marie Wright, I'm sure it was a godsend to get a job. And it's really sad to think you would go to college and become a dentist and then come here and you can't get a client because you're black and you're a woman, and of course nobody has any money because the UAW wasn't the UAW yet, and there was no dental insurance. So if you read Christopher Paul Curtis's one book about the little girl, I can't remember. Yeah, it is. Something Malloy. He made a point in the book, and I asked him about it, and he goes, well, it's very true. The little girl's family lives in Flint, then they go to Ohio, and they come back to Flint, and her teacher, who is white, pays for her to go to a dentist because her teeth are rotting out of her head. And he said, oh, that's very common for the 20s and the 30s and the 40s for people who worked in the shops. Their kids they might never have seen a dentist. And I looked, and that was one of the things the Mott Foundation they started thinking early for people in Flint, because really and truly, people who worked in the shop, their kids' teeth were rotting out of their heads. By the time they were in high school, they were missing teeth because they'd never been to a dentist. So obviously there was a call.
At the time that you're talking of, when the millage was passed, there was a move afoot to absorb Flint Public Library into Genesee District Library.
Yeah, it was not going to be a merger of equals. The county seemed to think that Flint was not going to provide anything of substance, and it could be just like another branch of the county system, and it wouldn't need this building, and it wouldn't need the collections that it has. So it could be a storefront, like our branches used to be. Flint wouldn't need this big library but that all fell apart. And that was also not a discussion of equals, and that got acrimonious.
Yeah,
The mighty Miss Malone. Yep, that's it.
but it went to a public vote.
Yes, it did.
And the public didn't vote in favor of it. Yeah,
They
we
turned it
did.
down. The next person I want to talk about is another woman. Probably you've never heard of her. The Reverend Jenny Johnson. Another one who came from somewhere else. This woman came from Dresden, Ontario. Her family had escaped on the Underground Railroad, went to Dresden, and then she was born after the Civil War, but she was born free in Canada. Kind of a surprise, she is ordained at age 39 by the General Conference of the Free Baptists in General in Dresden, Ontario, as a woman Baptist minister. I can't find out if she was the first, but she's sure really early for a Baptist woman minister. I think she has a very, by the way, she's another person that just missed 100. She is 99. So, and Mrs. Spencer could have 9, 10 more years going here. Miss Bowles too, more than that. She's not that old. She comes to Flint in 1925, so I'm sure she knew Marie Wright, and she founds the Colored Christian Center. And it's actually in a former, the Flint school system in the 20s is exploding because all these people are moving to Flint. And so they had what they would call temporaries. Later on, we had temporaries which were like, they converted them into houses, but in this case, the temporaries were like little better than a shack. And they would like throw it together on a lot, and that's a satellite for Homedale, or that's a satellite for this. So we've got too many second graders, so 30 of you can go over in this building, and 30 of you can go over in that building, and the principal's over here, and in the winter, hopefully, it's not too cold, but there's no insulation or anything. Well, Flint schools, in the goodness of their heart, they give her a building that they had used, because they finally completed whatever school, and it's over in East Pasadena. So it's in the city, but just barely. And it's to serve the African American community. It's to provide extra help for these kids, because now they're coming from the South. Frequently, they should be in the 2nd or the 3rd grade. They don't know how to count, they don't know their alphabet, they can't read or write, and they aren't acquainted with indoor plumbing. So there are some social issues. So for instance, they will go into the lavatory and not realize you do your business on the commode. And they will use the floor because they didn't quite. No one's ever shown them, how would you know? And their house in Flint probably has an earth closet outside, yeah, an outhouse, yeah. So she starts a Girl Scout troop, a Boy Scout troop, and as far as I can find, those are the first African American Girl and Boy Scout groups on the north side. There might have been an earlier one at Mount Olive or Quinn Chapel, but this is on the north side. A girls' sewing class, a literary society, and when the Depression hits, she runs the soup kitchen for the children. However, she's totally funded by churches in Flint giving her money. The state isn't paying anything. It's all local churches. As the Depression gets deeper and they have no money, their donations dropped. So at one time, she is she's living in a house that she rents for $10 a month, and she's running all of her social programs out of that house. And she survives because one of the young girls gets piano lessons, and the Mott Foundation gives her money for the literacy programs, and the county gives her some money for that. And she's serving 50 kids a day food and running the center on these little, piano lessons and the little dribbles and dabs that she gets here. So she also runs a nursery school, and Marion Coates, who later becomes a teacher in Flint, one of the first African Americans. She's the one that gives the piano lessons.
Wow.
Yeah.
A teacher all her life. So.
Yeah. So the first African American woman in Flint to run a social center is the Reverend Jenny Jones. North Baptist Church, which is a white congregation, sponsored her and brought her to Flint.
Interesting.
And when Wanda called them, because we found it, and I said, you know, wouldn't it be interesting to find out? And she goes, well, let's call them. They had no idea. They never heard of her and had no idea that they had ever started this. And the woman said, are you serious? And I said, so I'm not telling you. Well, yes, actually, you know, they brought her over here in 1925, 1926. She said, we have so she said, I'll call you back. No one there had any knowledge or record of it. But they thought that, she talked to the minister, they thought it was because African Americans came and they wanted someone to work with that community. And so they hired a black woman to do this, and she was already ordained minister, so what better person to come and take care of this for them? So anyway, she later went back to Canada, and that's where she died, and she was 99. Of all of the people that I'm going to talk about, she's the only one that someone wrote a book about. She was the subject of someone's PhD thesis for the University of Toronto. I thought, wouldn't it be nice to get a copy of this book, but it's over $100. Yeah, so I don't think it's got a big, yeah, it's a thesis, there's not a whole lot of demand for it. So it's, you know, very small.
But it's great for the archives.
Yeah, well, plus we'd have to order it from them, and I don't know, because I couldn't find any other source to order the book. So we do not own it. But I was happy to see they did have the table of contents and the sources, and the Flint Public Library is the source for 2 chapters, because actually the woman that wrote the book wrote to Ms. Coles, and I sent her everything we had. So that's what it was. Dr. Jesse Leonidas Leach. We did such a poor job. I think he is just like tremendously interesting. How about Leon Leach? Not the younger one, this is the dad. Oh, you know him. You've heard of him. Okay, good deal. Very few people in Flint do, and I think it's really strange because this summer we had a man who is a tenured professor in Japan come over, and I guess he comes over every year, and he's working on this incredibly involved project, and he goes to U of M, and Paul Gifford over at U of M suggested he come and talk to me, and because Paul called me and he goes, you know about Dr. Leach, right? And I said, yes. He goes, well, we have this Japanese guy, and he comes every year. I want you to talk to him for a little bit about Dr. Leach. This guy knew more than I did, and he's from Japan. But he is all excited about this because somebody even knew about Dr. Leach, and we even had Who's Who in Negro America, or Colored America, excuse me. They had a picture of Dr. Leach in the book. He was all excited, so. Because it's kind of hard to find pictures of him. Dr. Leach was born in 1892, another one that was not born here. He was born in Nashville, and he got his master's, his bachelor's, and his MD from Meharry. And he later went to Wilberforce. In Nashville, he was the city medical inspector, which I thought was interesting. He was the medical inspector for Nashville Public Schools, assistant Flint city physician in 1924, and even though it doesn't say it in the paper, I'm going to say he's probably the first African American to be the city physician, because it's 1924, and there aren't that many black doctors, and then he was professor of postmortem pathology at the Cincinnati Embalming College. I thought that's interesting. And then he was a medical doctor here, and he practiced at St. Joseph's and at Women's Hospital. I think it's very strange that we don't know more about Dr. Leach. We don't talk about him here. He was the first African American to be on the Genesee County Board of Supervisors, which was what we had before we had the county commissioners. Supervisors worked in a different way, and when the state adopted the new constitution in '63, they changed it, but let's say things were like they are now, the city of Davison would have sent a commissioner, and Davison Township would have sent a commissioner. Flushing would have sent a commissioner for the city, and Flushing would have sent a commissioner for the township. Flint would have sent a commissioner for every ward.
Whoa.
Boy, that was a big group.
It was a huge group. It was 30-some people on the Board of Commissioners. They're not equal member districts. Because think about it. So like Davis in the city is only roughly 5,000 people, and the township is closer to 20, it's 15, 16, somewhere in there. So, you know, it's not one person, one vote. Then, this is early, so, you know, Flint is huge. So the wards in Flint probably have more people in a ward than you might have in many townships, but you have only one person. But Dr. Leach is elected by his ward, and so he is the first African American to be a Genesee County supervisor. He is also, he belongs to the American Medical Association, the National Medical Association, the Odd Fellows, the Elks. He was the state president in 1928. He was on the national board for the NAACP. He was the state president of the NAACP from 1941 to 51. Then he served on the board at the national level for 18 years. He was one of those 20 African Americans who pledged to be an original sponsor for the Cultural Center, which, by the way, Mrs. Spencer and Dr. Spencer were as well. He had to give $25,000, and it's 1954 to 58. And so $25,000 is some heavy change. He is the first president of the American Academy of Family Practice, the first president, period. Doesn't matter if he's black or anything, he's the first president. And he's a founding member of the Kappa Alpha Psi, did I get that right? Yeah, Flint chapter, he's a charter member.